What's up, guys? This is Yasin, and today we're going to be going over the best going first cards that you can play. So these are cards that are only really played post game 1 when you know for a fact that they're going first. So they only come up once every 3 games, meaning that they better be broken. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem, and we're going to be putting it in the not yet categories. But yeah, I think for the most part, pretty much all these cards are good. That's the reason why I don't have like a dog shit section below. Yeah, so even the green one is not too bad. I don't do this too often. Usually, especially in like my best decks tier list videos, there's always like 70, 80 freaking decks. So yeah, like maybe 30 of them are gonna be dog shit unplayable. But most of the time, I at least put them in like mid or decent options. And a lot of these cards right here, like I said, are very good. So this is going to be a really interesting video for sure. And I really recommend watching all the way until the end. Anyways, before we go any further, you already know the drill. As always, smash the like and subscribe button. Check out my Moonlight spreadsheet on my website, yacineygo.com. Very first link at the top of the description box below. And shout out to my sponsors, Supreme Pro at tsx1.com. And with that being said, let's get right into it. The first card is Mistaken Arrest. And this card is Exodia if you can play it in Malice. Kind of conflicts with like a lot of decks because usually you do have to search a lot from the deck to the hand. So if your deck can like not do that, so for example Malice Dinomorphia, then a card like this is completely busted because it really is a turn skip against 90% of decks out there. So in other words, if your deck doesn't play Mistaken Arrest, it doesn't lose to it, therefore it can't play it. Otherwise, yeah, don't play this card if you lose to your own card. Obviously it makes sense. But yeah, it is a very niche card, but again, one of the decks that can play it is one of the best decks in the game. Full Force Virus. It's a little mid, so you gotta tribute a Dark Monster with, I believe, 2,000 or more defense, something like that. And then you check for all of the opponent's monsters in your hand, opponent's hand and field, who have 1,500 or more defense. Hold on a second. Wait, I just gotta double check because I'm kind of getting confused here. Yeah, okay, so it does check for defense, and it destroys the monsters with 1,500 or less defense. It's really good against Vanquish Soul. The only survivors would be Madlove, as well as Jiaolong and Holy Su. Everything else will die. You do have to tribute a monster, like a dark monster with pretty fat stats. You can tribute Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, so if you want to play like Trap Trick or Thrust into like one of the Virus trap cards, you can do that, but I think this is like one of the not too great viruses for the most part. And also your opponent will keep like all the hand traps usually, because hand traps, they do have like pretty thick booties. So yeah, I don't know if this is better than Deck Devastation Virus. Artifact Sanctum is a great option as a one-of for Thrust so that you can turbo out Artifact Lancia against Malice, but it doesn't really do any more than that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's not a card that I would consider to be like an Exodia-esque card. Dragon's Bind is just another one of those mid cards because you do already have to have like a Dragon Xyz monster on the field. Like Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, it turns on Dragon's Bind, Dragon's Mind, as well as the Virus Traps. And by the way, speaking of Dragon's Mind, it's here, but it doesn't really have anything to do with Dragon's Bind, so I'm just gonna review it like separately. But yeah, this card's good. It's just that again, it also could be like picked apart. Like if your monster gets like wiped away, then your opponent can still special summon it. It's not like it lingers, otherwise it would have been completely unfair. There can only be one. This card is like anywhere between Exodia and Great Option, but I have to keep it in Great Option just because it doesn't linger, and it can be stopped by the likes of, you know, X-Raziel Dumping Aggregator. If you have to like flip this card on draw phase, or if your opponent starts like summoning monsters and attack, and then, you know, you're like, oh, okay, you're finally trapped, but then you can like crash the monsters and then summon X-Raziel in main phase 2. That's a little problematic. So if you have There Can Only Be One against Raziel, I recommend only flipping this card up after your opponent committed to summoning like monsters that would conflict with X-Raziel. So yeah, keep that in mind. And also if you have like monsters that are in defense position so that your opponent cannot crash, or like if your monsters are in attack, they gotta have like low attack. Anyways, Call by the Grave, yeah, obviously this is Exodia without a shadow of a doubt. Just like Triple Tactic Talent, if you're going first with a deck like Raziel Mitsurugi, it's really hard. Like, or Raziel Gagaga, like these two decks with Triple Tactic Talent, they feel completely unstoppable because you do have to hand trap them. Their end board is way too layered. They got the Raziel Cross, the trap card, the Great Purification, or even like the Gagaga counter trap card. It's not even a Gaga card, but it's searchable by Gaga Girl. So yeah, they can end on like all kinds of interruption. They can also hand loop you for 2 cards. They can search Nibiru with Gallant Granite. You absolutely cannot afford to let that end board resolve, which is why you really need a hand traps, and a card like Call by the Grave or Triple Tactic Talent is really going to prevent that from being a viable strategy. Macrocosmos is not a great option just because of like all the time it takes for you to really benefit off of it, but it is still a decent card. But because of the fact that Vanquish Soul and, you know, all those decks, they don't really care too much, I would rather rely on a card like Dimensional Fissure, which I think is significantly better. I still consider it kind of mid just because if you're playing Dimensional Fissure, it means that your deck isn't even that great to begin with. But at least you can shut down like Veiler and DD Crow and Jewel and Logbird with cards like Dimensional Fissure. So if you're playing this in pure Mitsurugi, I think it makes sense. But if you're... I don't really recommend playing Macrocosmos, for example, in pure Mitsurugi. Again, you really do have to like prevent those hand traps that have to be sent to the graveyard as a cost. And this is like one of your best friends at doing that. Imperial Iron Wall is very niche, so yeah. It's not really like the card is mid, it's just... because I think it's really broken when it does well. But unlike Sanctum, it's not a thrust target, so if you're not searching this card with like King of the Sky Prison, or I guess Lord of the Heavenly Prison in the Odeon deck, you're gonna have to like physically hard draw this card, and I don't really think this is a viable strategy. Blackout Laughs, it's really easy to play in a wide variety of decks like Lunalight because of Foolish Burial Goods, because they play Serenade Dance or Lunalight Perfume. You can also dump this in White Forest, you can discard it for cost with LZ, and then chain Blackout Laughs calling Razor Detonator, and then you're really just like playing through a bunch of your opponent's interruptions. I think this card is like really flexible. If you're playing this in a deck that discards a lot, it's going to be even better than a hand shot because you get like full value out of all your cards at the same time. And this is a card like something that I've always liked with cards with graveyard effects. And obviously there are other cards like that in the list, like Mischief of the Gnomes. And yeah, Blackout Laughs, I think it does its job particularly well. Light Imprisoning Mirror, honestly, it's not really like light, the light attribute is like that insane right now. Obviously, there's Fiendsmith and Blue Eyes, but I think the dark attribute is particularly problematic because of Malice and Mitsurugi, which are significantly better than Blue Eyes and Fiendsmith right now. So Light Imprisoning Mirror, not the best. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, I mean, it's... even then, I wouldn't consider it to be the best because... if people are playing Mitsurugi, it really could be Mitsurugi Razul, and then they can just beat it with Tornado Dragon or Detonator and stuff like that. I don't know, I don't really think it's like... it doesn't really cover like everything, right? You need a Floodgate that stops every single attribute in the game, obviously only on your opponent's field. On your own field, nah, everything resolves. Yeah, I'm not asking for too much, right? Grave of the Super Ancient Organism, it's definitely not its time to shine yet. Even though it's like actually really cool against pure Mitsurugi, it doesn't really have any other great application. Like Razul, Gagaga, Malice, etc. Like those decks, they're broken. They constitute like a really big portion of the metagame, and they don't care. And obviously, when every deck can just make an SP to banish it, it's maybe not ideal. However, when Dragon Tail will come out, this card could be great, just like Non-Fusion Area. So there's gonna be like more options as the format progresses. But I think a card like this right now, it's not the proper time. When Despia was good, this card was good. Different Dimension Ground. I think this is like one of the best mid card that you can play. Again, just because cards that are kind of like shift your S cards, they're not good enough against Mitsurugi or even Razul, honestly. And what else? Vanquish Soul, obviously, Malice. It feels like all the best decks, they can afford to play through these kinds of cards. So I'd rather have like super specific cards to just wipe the floor with them. Like for the Razul based decks, Mischief of the Gnomes performs better, and against Malice, Artifact Sanctum into Lancia performs better. So why would I play a card like Different Dimension Ground that isn't guaranteed anything necessarily? However, against Mermail and Memento, this card is the nuts. Like completely unfair. This is a turn skip. So if Yu-Gi-Oh was actually more diverse in the sense where those decks were, you know, present in like higher quantities of, then Different Dimension Ground would for sure be a one-of staple for triple tactic thrust at the very least, if not like a 3-of or a 2-of for Trap Trick. But as it currently stands, I can't really imagine myself relying on Different Dimension Ground in to be like one of my side deck options. Gashira Fenrir, I think the card is like very flexible in what it does. I mean, it can be a going first and going second card. It doesn't really have like any terrible matchups. It's always good against just about everything. It's not like that amazing against like Vanquish Soul just because it targets. So obviously, you know, they go Normal Summon Raisin effect, search Burger, and then you go okay, res, banish the Raisin, chain Burger. It doesn't really make too much sense, you know? And it's really easy for them to just beat like a Fenrir in 2 seconds. So that's like the problem that I kind of have. But apart from that, it's a great interruption against Malice. It's still decent against Razul, even though it's not like the best every single time. I do like it for the most part. You know, X Razul, dump Aggregator, Chilling 1, Chilling 2. If they don't negate the Fenrir, then you just go, okay, banish the X. And then they don't have like a, you know, a raisable monster in the field or grave. So if they want to special summon the sword, that's not gonna happen. They have to normal summon sword, and then they gotta search ice, and then special summon ice by discarding a card. It really makes everything a little more awkward for them, depending on how they play it out. So I think Fenrir can still be a great card for you, but I don't know, should I put in great option? I think it should be like at the very bottom of a great option, to be honest. The Eye of Truth is a super interesting one, so it reads, your opponent must keep their hands revealed at all times, and once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, if your opponent has like a spell card in hand, you gotta activate a mandatory effect that gives 1000 life points to the opponent. So I believe this makes it so that Eye of Truth can get hit by Ghost Ogre, but Ghost Ogre is not like super popular. And the fact that your opponent must keep the hand revealed at all times means that all the Vanquished Soul monsters cannot activate their effects, so they all become completely useless cards. And it's not super easy for Vanquished Soul to out a card like Eye of Truth if you flip it on standby phase. I believe Holy Sue can only summon itself during the main phase, so if your opponent doesn't already have like a monster on the field, good luck making a Nightmare Phoenix to destroy this. And all it really takes is Eye of Truth and one interruption going first, and you should be able to win against Vanquished Soul at the speed of light, because Vanquished Soul will pretty much never be a deck that will be siding board breakers. It'll always need those Earth, Fire, and Dark hand traps. So Floodgates are very good, like continuous trap card Floodgates are very good against Vanquished Soul. And I think Eye of Truth is a card that will eventually be potentially worth playing. But right now it's not really worth it, just because Vanquished Soul is not even seeing that much representation. Deck Devastation Virus is actually really good. I do like it. I think it's a card that probably the second best after Different Dimension Ground in this section. The word mid is not like the best choice of words for like this section, because what I really mean to say is like just above average, right? These are still good cards, but you can't rely on them solely just to like win you games, right? Whereas a card like Fenrir, like depending on the situation, if you have like Fenrir and way too many oceans, you can just beat down with Fenrir over and over. And a card like Blackout Laughs, it fulfills like so many different purposes, and it's really good like multiple times. So that's the reason why I think a card like that is good. And obviously these cards, they are basically, I mean, this is a turn skip, and this ensures that your hand traps, they pretty much like, your opponent's hand traps are not resolving, or you punish your opponent for hand traps. A card like Deck Devastation Virus, you need to be already kind of playing the game to like some degree in order to, for you to benefit off of that. And you can get unlucky with a deck like with a card like Deck Dev, because if your opponent has like all the spell cards to search the monsters and you shotgun this on draw phase, maybe you're just gonna hit like 1 or 2 cards in your opponent's hand. But against Vanquished Soul, if you can hit like 4 or 5 monsters, then this is where it becomes really broken. Also, just like Eye of Truth, there will eventually be a format where this card will be broken, but maybe not right now. Triple Tactic Thrust, I think, is a great option if you play like the normal trap cards to turbo out, but obviously it's probably gonna have to be here, just because you do have to have a lot of commitment in your side deck. And I think there's still better options overall than Triple Tactic Thrust. Like, even if you want to get access to like the same like normal trap cards or like different normal trap cards, whatever, I don't really care too much. Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgment, I don't think these cards are great anymore, and I've already made a video about them. Even though they cover a lot of ground and they were historically some of the best side deck cards that you could have, the fact that Valon the Psychic Sky Blaster now exists and can be dumped off of X-Razor really just makes these cards not worth it anymore. Like, yeah, sure, you can negate the summon of X, but like, who cares? Like, you're still the loser in this situation, because then what's gonna happen is that the Valon is gonna be destroying another one of your back row. So if you have like 2 Solemns, you get mega screwed, and then your opponent can special summon X-Razor again, and then dump another Xyz monster. So you can dump like Aggregator, and then go Chilling, Quenching 2 and break her board even more. So your Solemns, they just get like expanded in 2 seconds, and it really isn't a trade that is favorable for you. So if you can play like cards that linger, it's just gonna be so much better. So I think these cards, right now, not the best. Heat Wave is a card that is only really good in board breaker formats, or like in Tenpai, where, you know, you go first, you activate this card, and then your opponent has all the hand traps in the world, and it does nothing. Yeah, it's a hand trap format, so I don't know. I'm probably gonna have to put it there. Still really good, but not right now. Gozen Match is... It's not the format for Gozen Match either, because a lot of decks, they don't really care too much. Vanquished Soul, they can out Gozen Match. It's not too hard. They can go Holy Sue, summon... I believe they can summon Caesar from the deck. I just gotta double check. Yeah, they can. And then they can... Because it's Earth, summon an Earth, and then they can destroy the Gozen Match. Whereas with Rivalry, it's ridiculously difficult. So I think Rivalry is a better card, if anything. And I would probably put it like here-ish, probably. It's not like it changes much of anything, the exact positioning. Eradicator, Epidemic Virus. I think there's like more monsters than spells and traps circulating around, because again, it's not a board breaker format, it's a hand trap format. So I would probably place Eradicator Virus as like one of the worst virus trap cards that you can play. And Crush card, I mean, it's actually kind of cool. It's really nice in Vanquish Soul because you can tribute your Link 1, that is a dark monster, and it has 0 attack. So, you know, it's always like free fodder for Crush card. And in the mirror match, it's low-key really good. It's gonna hit the Raisin, the Jiaolong, the Heavy Burger, as well as the Caesar Valius. So in other words, it hits absolutely everything except for Holy Sue and Mad Love. These are the only 2 survivors, and obviously hand traps are gonna survive. And your opponent is probably not going to be using the bonus effect to destroy monsters from the deck. So yeah, this card can be played in Moonlight in case you get a hand trapped or like turn skipped. It can be played in Vanquish Soul, it can be played in Malice. I think Crush card is actually a very good card, and if anything, I'm willing to upgrade this card to just above average, at the very least, because these cards do not suck. It's just that I don't think... Honestly, even Fenrir should be downgraded over here. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there is no way I can place like Fenrir that much above the Solemns and stuff like that. Even though I don't think the Solemns are great, and I think that Fenrir is good, I don't think there's like that much of a gap between them overall. But yeah, anyways, Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, I think this is a pretty nice option because of the fact that it is very reactive. You know, it's not like a trap card that you can just flip at any moment, but it does out Liger Dancer, and because of that, it could be a better option than I would want to give it credit for. Pretty nice, but you still have to worry about like Silverhound's Graveyard effect that can negate this, so that's the issue. But if your deck cannot inherently out Liger Dancer, Karma Cannon can be one of your best friends. Anti-Spell Fragrance, I mean, it's an unsearchable Saki 1-of, and it's only really good in your opening 5, and that's it, that's all. So honestly, I don't really think this is a perfect format for Anti-Spell. Gravekeeper's Inscription, it's useless against a lot of decks, so it's not gonna be super helpful. And you might as well just play a better going first card, so I'm gonna have to put it there. It's actually worse than Dragon's Bind, probably, because it covers less ground. But I mean, you can still... There are a lot of, like, different effects, actually, so I still think it's good. Actually, no. For sure, the card is better than Different Dimension Ground if you can play it. Because it's like... It feels more one-sided, in a way. Depends. But it's a spell card, so you can protect yourself from Bestials on turn 1. And it can almost be used as a board breaker, depending on how you want to see it. You know, you just call, like, neither player can banish monsters from the grave, going second against Malice, and it's not too bad. You know, you dodge Whitebinder and a lot of things. Metal Throne is going first. I think it's pretty good. Even against, like, Vanquish Soul, it's really good. In the Vanquish Soul mirror match, your opponent summons Holy Sue on turn 0, and then you tries to use the effect. You go Chain Metal Tronus, and then... You know, you negate the Holy Sue, and then you summon your own Holy Sue, and then you can turn it into the rocks, recycle back the Holy Sue, summon the Holy Sue, and then it's like unnegated. And then you can go Holy Sue effect, reveal a Fire in the Dark, summon Raisin from deck, and then you basically just combo off. You haven't even used your normal summon. You can do so much. I think Metal Tronus has a lot of really cool potential, and it's just a card that is overall just like underexplored in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, this card should be getting more credit. So I'm even willing to like upgrade it to great option. Honestly, I do think it's that great. Soul Drain, I mean, yeah, there's so many cards that are similar, right? Gravekeeper's Inscription, Different Dimension Ground, Soul Drain. You might as well just play the ones that linger, because one turn is all it takes usually. You want to play around Lightning Storm Industrial if possible, or SP and Nightmare Phoenix. Those kinds of cards too, they're definitely problematic. Crossout is like pretty much on the same league as these cards. It makes a lot of sense. Trap Trick is the best great option here, because if you've got like a broken normal trap card that you want to turbo out, like Different Dimension Ground, or I don't know, like Karma, that was a bad example, or like the virus trap cards, whatever, then Trap Trick is like your best friend, and doing that proactively without relying on your opponent hand trapping you in the first place. So whether you want to play Thrust or Trap Trick, it really depends on like your side deck space. Like, if you have, like, Trap Trick with, like, 2 or 3 different normal trap cards... Sorry, if you have, like, 2 or 3 different normal trap cards, then you gotta play Thrust so that you can get access to all of them. But if you only want to play, like, one normal trap card that you always want to see, you may as well play Trap Trick, because whether your opponent hand traps you or not, it literally ends up being the exact same thing. Sorry, what I meant to say was Trap Trick is much better in this instance, because if your opponent doesn't hand trap you, then you can still Trap Trick, whereas if you're, you know, if you have Thrust, then it's obviously a dead card. I prefer cards that are proactive overall. Scale Drain is still a really good card, but it's not perfect. Probably gonna have to put it there. If you can play it, play it. Dimensional Barrier is a very good card as well. Obviously, it's really good against Raziel Gagaga, and it's good against Pyramid Tsurugi. But that's pretty much it, honestly. It doesn't really feel like it's that much. Raziel Mitsurugi can still play through it because they got Raziel and Mitsurugi. So, yeah, really has to be only against, like, Pyramid Tsurugi and Raziel Gagaga, I guess you can say. Dragon's Mind. I think if you can play this card, it's really worth considering because it can negate just about everything, and you can even like Foolish Barrel Goods ascend it or like discard it and then get it back. Just a really, really good card. It's really good in like the Raziel mid-range versions, and then in Blue Eyes it's really good. In White Forest it's really good. It's just like, this card's overall incredible, but it would just be a one-of, honestly. I don't really recommend like playing 3 copies of this card. Harpy's Featherstorm is probably the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now if you go first. It's just like a card that you just flip and your opponent has to pass turn right away. There are virtually no outs to a card as stupid as Harpy's Featherstorm. It's completely degenerate and it's not welcome whatsoever in Yu-Gi-Oh! Solemn Scolding is trash. Like actual garbage because it conflicts with like obviously all the other set cards that you're playing in your deck. Magical Deflector, not good. It's either for this card to be good, like it has to be like a runic format probably. Simul Archfiends. Yeah, this card's pretty good against Malice, and I feel like that's kind of it. I mean, it's not even that great against Raziel. It's pretty easy to beat it, but honestly, I'd rather play something else overall. But it's searchable off of Archfiend Hyris. So if you play like Q-Bell or something that can make like Aerial Eater, it's not too bad. So I think it should still be maybe somewhere around here. And then Shared Ride, yeah, it's not like 2018 Sky Striker anymore. And Mischief of the Gnomes is for sure one of the best normal trap cards to play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. Yeah, I would probably just swap There Can Only Be One and Trap Trick and Thrust just so that I can kind of showcase like the contrast between both of these cards being pretty much on the exact same league. But I would still consider Trap Trick to be a little better just because you don't have to wait until your opponent hand traps you. This card is always going to be live. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this tier list of, you know, the best hand traps, or the best going first cards that you can play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. You let me know your thoughts on this video and also like the best cards that you like to utilize to steal some wins when you go first. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.